Welcome to The Right Focus, a podcast for writers, newbies, and veterans, and everyone in between. We're hosted by Emma Lee with the assistance of Remy Black and Edie Rooms, all from Writers Inc. Books. Our focus is productivity, process, craft, and tools. Each episode lasts as long as it takes to fix a quick dinner, drive a short commute, or take a brisk walk. Resources and links are in the show notes. Visit us at therightfocus.blogspot.com. Now, on to this week's episode. Can you see autumn yet? I'm yearning for it. My special time of the year. The anniversary of starting this podcast 5 years ago and starting my publishing journey 10 years ago. Autumn is always wonderful to me. I see no signs of it yet, but I'm definitely looking, even though it's much too soon. We can get that way with our own writing, rushing toward the end, especially when we juggle multiple projects. That's the focus of our quick tip this week. Our interview is with Michael Dabney, writing as M.B. Dabney, a former journalist now inspired to write about a private detective in mid-1980s Philadelphia. We end with our check-in. Let's begin. Quick tip number 11. Juggling projects. I cannot write 2 fiction projects at the same time. I've tried alternating days, having the week 3 days, then 3, and writing one project until I'm drained, and then switching to the other, flipping back and forth. Those methods merely slow down my creative muse, as if I'm confusing her. I likely confused her today. I can write fiction and nonfiction simultaneously. I can do the rough draft on one project while I edit and correct a second fiction project. These work processes use the creative, then the critical brain, easy enough to keep the muse away from editor. And I know that I need to take certain breaks from creative outpouring. Otherwise, I run ahead of the muse and run out of ideas and words. Slowdowns are necessary, therefore. Yesterday, I mulled over murder throughout the morning until I could seize the opportunity to pour out some writing for my current project. The Murder is my next project, a short story. I did a little mulling and muddling, but I wasn't happy with anything that I worked out. When I realized that I had achieved my week's word count goal, I decided to use today as a pure creativity exercise. Last thing for last evening was looking over the ideas that I had generated and realizing those ideas just wouldn't work. I needed a different direction, totally different. Since the title didn't generate ideas on its own, I wrote a quick note to try a new direction. Start with names, I wrote. After today settled down, I fetched a clipboard and the ideas that I had, then stared into space. Ideas do come out of blankness. Don't fear the blankness. The first name that popped up was one that I didn't really like. I came up with many more, writing them on paper like a high school girl trying out variations of her name matched to her boyfriend's. None of the names fit, not really. I returned to the first name, twisted it a little, and suddenly I could see the character hiding in the shadows. Never settle. You know you found the right name or idea or motif or title when a scene develops. Story comes out of many things: an image, a name, a title, a motif, blankness. All of these will generate events. It's the writer who will shape the events into the story. I started writing, my character hiding in the shadows, fingers pressed to her mouth to keep from making any sound. When I finished, I had 1,300 words, an opening scene, the secrets that both dual protagonists were hiding, and the murder that would occur. I won't touch this project in the foreseeable future. My focus remains on my current project. Waiting won't kill this new story. I must stay focused until the primary project nears completion. Waiting will improve the next project and may spark ideas for the current project. So, how are you doing this morning, Michael?
I'm fine. I'm fine. How are you?
I'm doing very well. This is Michael Dabney. Will you introduce yourself to our listeners?
Hi, I'm Michael. Well, as she said, I'm Michael Dabney. I'm a retired journalist and now author,
Mhm.
and I write mystery fiction as both short story and long form as M.B. Dabney, as in
Mhm.
Michael Bruce Dabney, but I just go by M.B. But in conversations as we're having here, I'll just go as Michael.
So no one in your life calls you MB.
Oh, no, 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 no.
That's hard to get out, by the way.
Yeah,
MB.
it is. It is. It was very strange because what happened was that, many years ago, when I would have to initial things. You have to put your initial down.
Hmm.
And so I just got so I could write MB or MBD very quickly.
Hmm.
And one day when I started writing fiction, I just kept the MB, and but no, in normal life, I'm just Michael.
Michael. Well, it's so nice to see you this morning. Why don't
Well,
you
it's nice to be seen. It's good to see you too.
why don't you tell us how you view challenge in writing? I've had many
Well,
different
um,
interpretations of it.
for me as an author, the probably the greatest challenge is of a blank page.
Yeah.
It's just a blank page. It's without regardless of what you've written up until then, but particularly if you start a new project, what you have is a blank page, and what you need to do is to say something that's new and
Mhm.
something that is informative, and something that is interesting and entertaining, and that you would want people to read.
Mhm.
And that for me is the greatest challenge. And it's a very when you're staring at the blank page, it's probably the loudest silence that you ever have because it's just there. If on a computer, it's like, a cursor or something was
Just
blinking
blink.
at you and it won't go away. So that's what it is. That is for me. And I feel that, whether I'm doing a short story or I'm, helping someone write a play or and certainly if I'm doing a novel, that is the big challenge, a very loud blank page.
Do you have any tricks that help you? Because I have to think about it for 2 or 3 days before I launch in. And that's hard. That's hard for me because I have to get certain things set in my head.
Yeah, when I'm in the middle of something, it's a little less difficult because it begins to consume my thoughts, and and what happens is I'm daydreaming about it,
Mhm.
a lot, the night before, or several. And so it's kind of there, but it's kind of like pulling it out and figuring out what words to say to express this. That's then the next challenge, that you have to meet. But what I try to rely on is since I was a journalist and I wrote every day, I was a daily journalist. I've written for a magazine, a business magazine early in my career. And then I worked for wire services for decades and then ultimately for a newspaper. But the, what you rely upon is observation, and reporting if you're a reporter, but observation and some inspiration. You begin to try and rely on that, so that when, it was time to sit down to write something, something will come out. Something will come out. You just have to trust yourself and rely on the sort of things, the millions of stories, if you're talking fiction, that's already in your head.
Mhm.
And that's how you get the words out.
I know I worked very briefly in the newspaper business and discovered very quickly that I was not the kind of newspaper person there needed to be. But I know in the time that I would drive back from wherever I had done the interview to getting to the newspaper office, I would usually come up with some sort of theme that had developed during the course of the questions.
Mhm.
And that would be my starting point. I used to make my editor mad because I would get interested in something they said and take a different track than she had anticipated for the story. And she would go like, "Didn't you talk about this and so?" And I'd go like, "No."
Well, the one as one of the things as a wire service reporter, and when if you're a wire service reporter, certainly back then, and I think many reporters now, because of the internet, and there's um you have to immediately produce something all the
Yes.
time. But
Mhm.
when I was a wire service reporter, and that kind of like helped how I became a writer, how I developed as a writer later as the internet came along. But it was always very immediate. And I remember before when dinosaurs were still roaming and there were not, not everyone had a laptop.
Mhm.
I would go kind of like your experience. I would go to a news conference or something, and I would be on my way back. I might be taking, when I was living in Philadelphia, for example, might be taking a subway back, and I'm rummaging in my head and saying, "Oh gosh, what am I going to say? And how do I say this? And blah blah blah." But as a reporter, and again, as a daily reporter, um, you have to produce right away. When you
Mhm.
sit down, you have to produce right away.
Mhm.
And so it would, again, I didn't think about it like this, but you just kind of, relied on some inspiration, listen to what you had heard,
Mhm.
figure out what it is that you want to know, and then write that down. I first went to United Press International after writing for Business Week magazine for a couple of years. And that was as early in my career.
Mhm.
And it was so funny because my editor at UPI, almost the first thing he almost would always do is he'd take out the first paragraph that I wrote, because I was thinking as a magazine person, you have a
Right.
little more time to get to the point.
Mhm.
But and in newspapers, you got to get right to it. And so
Immediately.
yeah, yeah. So I understand your experience and how your editor felt about it as well.
Now, I found that going into the newspaper business taught me that there really is no such thing as writer's block. There's always something there that you can pull out and you can go with. The blinking cursor is very intimidating to me,
Yes.
but there will be something that develops. It may
Oh
not
yeah.
be what you like, and it may sound like drivel, but you can always
Yeah.
work with it then as soon as you get it out on page.
Yeah, the thing about I found about writing, and I really relied on, I guess I probably developed it as a reporter, but I certainly rely upon it um as a novelist, and is that there's something already there, and you
Mhm.
just have to like tap into it.
Mhm.
And I've found and particularly as a novelist now, or a short story writer, when I have a writer's block, it's not that that something is being blocked, is I'm being uninterested.
Right.
I'm being uninteresting. And if
Mhm.
I'm uninteresting as the person writing this copy,
Mhm.
then it's going to be uninteresting to the person who's reading it. And so the challenge then is to make sure that you come up with something new. Look at it at a different angle,
Yeah.
or instead of going in tremendous detail about how blue the sky is,
Mhm.
and as the plane comes landing and whatever, you just say, the plane landed, and then you move on.
Right.
so
Because you're
that's
getting,
that. But the words are there. You have to just kind of trust yourself to find them.
yeah, and twisting
Yes.
what you think. It
Yeah.
helps
Just
me, I think, to be sort of pantser in going into things with that because it keeps my curiosity level up.
yes.
And I'm very surprised. And if I have something developed that really I did not plan for, I really want to pursue that because that tells me here's an interesting thing that my critical part of my brain was not thinking about, but the creative part of my brain gave to me.
Yes. Yeah. I in the balance between being a plotter and a pantser, um, I much prefer writing by the seat of my pants.
Mhm.
Writing a novel, however, at least for me, because if I do the first draft in a very, very, very short period of time, a matter of weeks, because I can't fix something until I write it. And
Right.
so I want to
Mhm.
get it all out very, very, very fast. This is the first draft. It's kind of like an extended outline in essence. But when I start writing, I will do something in longhand. I'll just write, narrative in longhand.
Mhm.
So I'll have an idea of where I'm going or at this point where I think I'm going. And then I will, use that as a guide. But when I'm writing, I just kind of daydream something, whatever the next group of scenes are going to be. And oftentimes I don't follow it. My second novel, I have two novels that are finished, and this is the second one. It's called A Deadly Game, and I wrote, I don't know, probably 8 or 10 page outline for that. And once I wrote it and then I put it down, I actually never looked at the outline again.
Mhm.
I, I
Your
never
brain
looked at
knew
the
where you were
outline
supposed
at
to go.
all.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, yeah, yeah, and there were things that came along and surprised me, and I went with it, but I had an
Mhm.
idea of where I was supposed to end up. Well, I always have an idea where I'm supposed to end up, and oddly
Mhm.
enough, that doesn't change.
Mhm.
But how I get there, and who's going to help me get there, what characters or whatever, it always surprises me when a new character that I hadn't considered comes along, but is essential to the story. And as a mystery writer, it also saddens me because oftentimes I don't think about it in advance, is when I have to kill someone off who I don't want to kill off.
Ah, yes.
And
Mhm.
usually it's very funny. It usually takes me, and this is also a challenge in
Mhm.
essence. Usually takes me a couple of days to do it. I mean, I'll be writing every day, and I know, oh gosh, poor Calvin's going to get, you know, murdered by a hit and run driver,
Mhm.
and I'll think, oh, I don't want to do that. Don't do that. But in the end, sorry, Calvin, you got to go.
If your brain tells you this person is going to die, they're going to die.
But yeah, they've got to go.
I wrote a mystery several years back, and I really was not anticipating it, but I was killing people right and left. It was a historical novel. It actually was during the Napoleonic Wars, and I was not
Oh,
anticipating having any fight scenes. And then all of a sudden, this guy was coming in with a knife, and we're going to have to fight him and with another knife. And and I'm going like, ah, I think I killed like over 10 people in that book.
oh wow. Yeah, in my first novel, which is called A Deadly Game,
Mhm.
I actually, three people get killed. Two of
Mhm.
them is part of the mystery of the novel, and
Mhm.
the last person I didn't know was going to get killed until the end, or close to the end,
Right.
and that one rather surprised me. And A Deadly Game, which is the second novel in a series, a David Blaze series,
Yeah.
mystery series. It was during the time I used my background as a reporter in Philadelphia in the 80s.
Mhm.
And there was a mob war going on and some other things. And and I used that also. It's fictionalized, but I also used that in the book. And there were lots, people getting bumped off all the time. And so I kind of used that. And I actually kind of used um, two cases or two particular incidents of where a mobster got killed in that book. One was he was murdered or assassinated when someone put a bomb under his porch or his front door,
Yes.
and it went off and it killed him. And
Mhm.
another one where there was a guy who was just outside a candy store, and he stopped to light up a cigarette, and several
Out he
people
goes.
came up and gunned him down. And
Yeah.
those events truly did happen.
Hmm.
I just fictionalized them and used them because I thought, oh, well, this will be interesting. So,
Yes, yes, it would be.
mhm.
Especially it's a wonderful juxtaposition. Here he is at a candy store, and you think things are safe, and then they're not. And so
Yeah.
that's a nice surprising twist. Do you find yourself when you have this handwritten rough draft? Because I do mine, my first draft is also handwritten because I can fly.
Mhm.
Do you find though that when you start converting it to the laptop that you sometimes say, well, I don't want to work on that scene, so I'm going to go into this one, like from moving from chapter 3 to chapter 7, and then you back up with chapter 3 and 4 and 5, or do you go straight through? I do
I
best when I
tend
go
to
straight
write,
through.
I tend to write in continuity as a
Mhm,
whole.
mhm,
It just for me it helps with the flow
mhm,
overall. However, has happened occasionally with a novel, uh, like one or two novels that I haven't been published yet, and I haven't sent out to my publisher yet because other stuff comes along. And I do know in at least one short story that I've written, um, the ending came to mind. The ending just really came to mind,
mhm,
and it was very settled, and it was difficult getting out of my head.
mhm,
And that's always happened when I was actually already on the computer and
mhm,
writing. And so I would write the end. Like I said, I normally write in continuity, just
mhm,
straight from beginning to end. But in those situations, I will stop
mhm,
and I will then go write the end. It might be a chapter and a half.
mhm,
And so I would have that at the bottom of my screen, and then I'd go
mhm,
back to where I was, and I would keep writing until they came together. And it's a very weird sort of thing because when I got to the end, I might be in the middle of the scene, but everything after that's already done. And so
right.
it's a weird sort of feeling because it can be rather anticlimactic. But
Mhm.
when I get to the end, I, go have a root beer or something and try and relax for a day and then go back and start doing the hard part, which is the rewrite, which is the rewriting.
Yes, yes, and making sure that you insert all of those hidden clues that come in. I find sticky notes very helpful for things like that.
Yeah, yeah. I do too, because I have just a lots of notes. But what I don't do, because I like to keep going, and I know, oh, this is going to be a problem here because I haven't, this is a new thing, and what I've just written won't totally fit with this new thing, this
Right.
slightly new direction. And so I'll make a note that after I finish the first draft, I have to go back and fix this hole. But if I
Mhm.
go back and fix it while I'm writing it, then I'll never get done. I always keep going back and changing something so I never get to the end. I always tell people, particularly audiences or new novelists or aspiring writers, for me, you can't fix that until you write it,
Right.
and so you write it and then you look at it and you say,
Mhm.
does this work? And you use your notes and everything else to put in those to fill in those little gaps so that you don't have plot holes.
Mhm. Right. The leaf blower has started with my neighbor next door, so we're going to keep talking. I've had
Okay.
slamming doors,
Well,
I've had
it's
leaf blowers, I've had mowers, I've had droning helicopters flying around.
but we're just going to keep going.
Oh, that's fine. That's perfectly fine. It was a warm and beautiful day here yesterday and very sunny. And right now, it's still fairly warm, but there's a thunderstorm. Right as
Oh
you were
my.
saying that, I could hear thunder here, and I was thinking, oh gosh, I hope they don't hear that. So it's raining and thundering and lightning and
Yeah.
so, but it's no problem. We can keep
I'm not
going.
going to worry about perfection. I gave up perfection years ago.
Yeah, me too.
Do you see any other challenges when you're writing?
Um, Part of going back to the very first thing is I think many writers I've found and actors too, oddly enough, they worry or I worry that I won't have something new to say. That I
Mhm.
all of the good stuff has already been extracted.
Mhm.
And and that's a very scary thought. And that's when you have to really begin to rely on your innate inspiration and experience and insight, everything, because there are lots of tons and tons and tons of stories out there and tons of story ideas out there. You just have to be able to tap into them.
Mhm.
But yeah, that's a sort of a scary thought for me, like what is my next? I mean, as soon as I have a novel with my editor now, and the novel, it's a third in the series, and it'll come out. It'll come out this fall. And but the day after I sent it to my editor, I started working on the fourth novel in the series immediately. And it has proven to be a bit more difficult, because I'm wondering, oh, did I say this before? Is this new? What am I don't want to be repetitive.
Mhm.
And that can be a challenge. But then again, I try and rely on my instincts and everything that, basically the stuff I've been telling you. I just have to keep reminding myself and move forward. But the story won't get told until I write it, until I get it
Right.
down. So I just plow ahead.
Right.
Most
Yeah.
of most of writing, and certainly mostly fiction it really is just hard work. It's seat of your pants. There's very little inspiration. There's probably only about, I don't know, 20% of it is inspiration. The rest of it is perspiration.
Yes.
And, oftentimes, during the perspiration of just writing whatever just is there, without being inspired, often inspiration will come as a result.
Mhm.
But yeah, writing is hard work, and it's very much seat in the pants, and that's how I approach it. That's how I accept it, certainly.
Yeah. Do you find yourself um, challenged? When I read new writers, one of the things that irritates me is that they will twist the story to make things happen the way they want them to happen, and there's no logic behind what they do. Does that kind of thing irritate you? And you
Oh
spend,
yes.
yeah.
Oh, most definitely yes. I have a just last week, I have a cousin who's not a writer. And but she wrote a what would be a novella. It's
Hmm.
it's I don't know, about 40,000 words, and she
Hmm.
wanted me to read it, and I agreed to it, and it's no fault of hers because she's not a writer. The story itself, the ending, or where she's leading to it, ultimately is pretty good. But yeah, it shows in terms of how she sometimes squeezes things into a scene, or even just not even an entire scene, just a paragraph or a sentence or two that just does not need to be there.
Right.
And I told her, because I've been busy, and I won't finish reading this until like the end of this week.
Hmm.
I told her I'm not going to content edit this. I'm just going to give you, or line edit this. I'm just going to content it overall
Right.
and say this
Right.
is
Hmm.
this is what works and what I don't think that works.
Hmm.
So I'm not sure how she's going to take it, but yes, when you're new at writing, certainly writing fiction, you do try to force things that just shouldn't be forced. But
Right.
you learn through developing in your craft, and most importantly, having a good editor to weed those sorts of situations out.
Right. Right. Anything else that you would like to talk about in relation to challenge or writing?
Um, no, I think we pretty much covered it, which is pretty good.
Mhm.
I just as a writer, I can't remember I had thought this before. I don't know, Dorothy Parker or someone had said it already, and I didn't know it. But I used to say to people that as a writer of fiction that I hate writing, but that's not really true. I actually enjoy writing, but what I absolutely love, which makes the challenges easier, what I
Mhm.
absolutely love is having written. I
Yes.
love, 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 love having written. Excuse me. And that really helps in terms of facing the challenges of having a blank page.
Right.
Because once I get it done, I at that point I have written. And it's such a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful feeling
Mhm.
to have written. And there was just a big thing of thunder. I don't know if you heard it, but it was pretty loud here. So, in any event, um, but no, that's it. Thank you. I just want to thank you very much. It's been a good conversation.
Talk to me about, I think this will come out, the episode will air at the end of July or the 1st of August. Do you have anything you would like to promote, or would you like to talk about the books that you have already out and what might be coming out soon?
Well, I really would like to talk about what's coming out soon, but I don't have a date for it yet.
Okay.
But so unfortunately I can't. But it will be the third in a series,
Hmm.
a David Blaze series, and the first one is this one. Let me back this up just a little. It's called An Untidy Affair,
Yeah.
and the second book in the series, which I've already showed you, is A Deadly
Yeah.
Game,
Hmm.
and it's about a young black detective, private detective in Philadelphia in the mid 1980s. Um, the first book, the first book was set on the day that the Philadelphia police bombed a house of a radical
Oh,
group called Move, M-O-V-E.
yes. Yeah.
And the book is not about Move. This is a mystery story, but Move is taking place
Hmm.
against that backdrop.
Hmm.
And the second book, which is actually a prequel to the first, I introduced in the first book this detective David Blaze who rents a office from his brother-in-law in West Philadelphia, and he only pays $1 a month because in perpetuity
Yeah.
because of something that he had done for his brother-in-law the previous year. So this
Hmm.
move was in 1985. So whatever it is he did for his brother-in-law would have taken place in 1984.
Right.
And the second novel, like I said, is a prequel,
Hmm.
and I examine what it was that he did, for his brother-in-law
Hmm.
that ultimately gets him a fairly nice office space for only $1 a month. So,
I would love
um,
to have that rent.
yeah, yes, of course, yes, of course. It was like I said, it was $1 a month. No one is supposed to know about it. What it is. No one knows, supposed to know. But as it turns out, most people in David Blaze's family, he finds out in the third book, actually, that everybody actually does know what he had done for his brother-in-law. So, but it involved a dead body in one of his brother-in-law's properties. So,
Right. Right.
in the event, that's what I've got out. But the next novel, which currently is titled The Jade Empress Murder. Jade Empress Murder
Mm.
will take
Mhm.
place it's set still in Philadelphia, and it will be set in 1986.
Okay.
And
So
it'll
you're
come out this
gradually
fall.
moving through the late 80s.
Yeah, I'm slowly going. Well, what happened is when I did the first one, I was trying to figure out what I wanted to write, and I knew again this is a blank page, and I knew there was going to be a murder. I didn't know who was going to get it, who was going to be murdered, or why they were murdered, or anything at all. And you might think I started with a character or a scene or something, and I didn't. I started with Philadelphia. I had worked. I was a reporter and wrote about Move during the time that I was there, including the day of the Move bombing. And I was thinking, okay, why did I set this in Philadelphia? And I thought, what's the most, amazing thing, or what something happened in the last 50 years in Philadelphia, and
Yeah.
Move came to mind. And so then the setting kind of at first dictated everything else.
Right.
So that's why that's why David plays the detective is in Philadelphia in the mid 80s. And the at some point I will probably stop. I won't have it moving in time specifically, so I can, because there's one character who has a grandmother who is like 80 years old, and I cannot kill her off, obviously,
Well,
and
good.
keep her around. So I can't keep moving through the 80s into the 90s
Mhm.
because it would be more difficult for her. So at
Right.
some point, I will just, it'll just be David Blaze investigating something, and people will say roughly the same age,
Right.
but haven't gotten to that yet.
Who is that author? I've never read her, but apparently everything is set in the same year, and she has like multiple book. Is it V.I. Warshawski, the
I think
character?
so. That may be. I don't. Trying to think of, since there are thousands of well, I mean thousands, but
It
hundreds
feels
of
like
writers that I
thousands.
think of in my head. I was trying to think of one in particular, but yeah, that would it. You can have character development,
Mhm.
but which is necessary, particularly with a series, because it keeps people interested. But you can't have them going year by year, because then you'd have to get them older and older and older.
Right.
I mean, Sherlock Holmes is roughly the same age forever.
Yes, he is.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And we can all do that as well.
Yeah.
Michael, it was so much fun talking to you. Um,
Well, Emily, it's been wonderful, wonderful, wonderful talking to you. And I didn't hear any leaf blowers, so you don't have to worry about it on my end.
well, good, good. I'm not hearing any thunder, so I hope it goes away from you.
Okay.
See you later. Or, well,
I'll see
I
you
guess
later. Thank
not.
you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Time for check-in number 11 for August 6 to 12. 3 weeks remain in August. 3 weeks remain for our challenge. I'm ahead at this 11th check-in, but I need to finish. My goal is 65,000 words, but the real goal is publishing a 30,000 word novella. At the start of this week, I'm at 58,246, 7,000 plus more than I thought I would be at. I still need 4,949 words for this week. How did this week go? Well, I left off with chapter 12 of the 13 chapters, so that's where we pick up. Wednesday, August 6th, the rough of chapter 12 is finished, 1,580 words. Thursday, August 7th, I ripped out the 4 ending pages for chapter 12 and I added back 1,100 words. That leaves the chapter at 1,750 words. Then I started chapter 13, about 225 words. Friday, August 8th, I had to restart chapter 13. Then I finished it, 1,745 words. I feel as if my creative brain is fried, but I'm happy. Saturday, August 9, I started proofing chapters 1 to 7. I'm not doing as much revision, but I still have a lot of sticky notes that I am incorporating. Sunday, August 10, draft chapter 11. It's now 2,127 words, so I added about 500 words. Monday, August 11th, draft of Chapter 12, now at 1,968 words, again adding some. Tuesday, August 12th, draft Chapter 13, the end of the novella, adding about 350 words. The chapter now stands at 2,084. The novella in its entirety is currently in draft form at 30,785 words. Words this week, 8,075. That's 66,321. The major goal is met. Yippee!
Thanks for listening to The Right Focus, a podcast for writers at all levels, hosted by Emma Lee from Writers Inc. Books, assisted by Renee Black and Edie Runes. Our focus is productivity, process, craft, and tools. Music is licensed through Audio Jungle, called Background Music Loop. Its creator is Alexander Polishchuk, known on Audio Jungle as Plastic 3. The music comes in different iterations. Show notes and resource links for this and other episodes can be found at therightfocus.blogspot.com. Write to us at winkbooks@aol.com when you have questions, comments, and speculations. We will try to answer you as quickly as possible. By the way, we will not mind your email address. That's rude. If you find value in our content, share with your writing friends or write a review. We're small beans here without the advertising budget of the big peeps, and you can make a difference. And whatever occurs, write on.